The Spencer family was already teetering on the edge of emotional chaos, but nothing could prepare them for the latest shockwave that Sheila Carter was about to send through their lives. Sheila, the woman who had caused so much havoc over the years, seemed to be at the end of her rope. She had spent years playing manipulative games, hiding behind lies and deceit, but now she was making an unexpected claim. Her life was coming to an end. The message she sent was clear and chilling. Sheila Carter, the woman who had once been indestructible, was about to die. And with her impending death, she was asking for one thing: forgiveness. As Sheila lay in her hospital bed, deteriorating, her words hit like a thunderclap. The woman who had orchestrated so much pain, who had shattered so many lives, was now pleading for mercy, for a chance to make amends before she met her maker. Her voice, weak and frail, was full of vulnerability, and she begged Finn, her son, to forgive her for the sins she had committed. She painted a picture of herself as someone who had been misunderstood, someone who had made mistakes but was now ready to face her fate with repentance. Sheila's sudden vulnerability and plea for forgiveness threw Finn into emotional turmoil. Finn, who had spent years trying to reconcile with his biological mother, found himself caught between his sense of duty and his deep desire for closure. Could he forgive Sheila for the horror she had caused? Could he offer her the peace she sought, even if it meant allowing himself to be vulnerable? He had always wanted to believe that deep down, Sheila wasn't the monster the world painted her to be, but now, in the face of her seeming fragility, he was being forced to confront the very real conflict inside him. This was the moment where years of emotional baggage collided with reality. Sheila had wronged so many people, yet she was asking for a final chance at redemption, and Finn wasn't sure how to respond. Steffi, on the other hand, could not even entertain the thought of offering Sheila the forgiveness she demanded. Steffi had seen firsthand the damage Sheila had done, how she had tried to tear her family apart, how she had manipulated and twisted situations to her own advantage. The woman who was asking for forgiveness was the same woman who had tried to murder her, who had been behind so much of the pain in her life. To Steffi, there was no redemption for someone like Sheila. Her emotions boiled over, and she couldn't contain her rage. How dare Sheila ask for forgiveness after all the lives she had destroyed? Steffi wasn't going to allow herself to be manipulated by Sheila's feigned remorse. Sheila's apparent vulnerability only served to ignite Steffi's fury. Steffi confronted Sheila, hurling accusations at her with a fire and venom that left everyone in the room on edge. "You want forgiveness? After everything you've done to my family?" Steffi's words were sharp, her voice trembling with emotion. She couldn't and wouldn't forgive Sheila. She couldn't allow herself to be caught up in Sheila's latest scheme, and she wasn't about to let her destroy her family again. Her anger, while understandable, left Finn caught in the middle, torn between his mother's last request and his wife's unrelenting hatred for the woman who had caused them so much grief. Deacon Sharp, the man who had always been caught between his love for Sheila and his moral compass, found himself struggling with his own emotions. Deacon had been through a lot over the years. His relationship with Sheila was complicated, filled with passion, betrayal, and confusion. Despite everything, he still had feelings for her, and he couldn't help but be drawn to the woman who had once been a part of his life. He was torn between the loyalty he felt for his own heart and the reality of what Sheila had done. Was he truly supposed to forgive her? Or was he simply being swept up in the emotions of the moment, a man in love with a dangerous woman who had never truly changed? Deacon's inner turmoil deepened as Sheila's condition worsened. It wasn't long before the medical monitors confirmed Sheila's deteriorating state. Her vital signs dropped, and the doctors made it clear that she was not long for this world. As she continued to plead for forgiveness, everyone in the room was forced to reckon with the truth, whether or not they wanted to. Steffi could not stand the thought of letting Sheila escape the consequences of her actions by playing the role of a dying woman seeking redemption. The others, however, were left to navigate the emotional complexity of the situation. Steffi insisted that there should be no mercy for Sheila. There was no way she could let the woman who had hurt her family, time and time again, leave the world with any semblance of peace. But Finn, despite his anger, felt conflicted. Was it right to leave things unresolved with Sheila? Could he offer her some form of peace in her final moments, even if she didn't deserve it? Finn was a man caught in an emotional whirlwind, a son trying to make peace with the mother who had caused him so much pain, and a husband trying to support his wife's decision, even though he didn't fully agree with it. As the days passed, it seemed that Sheila's time was running out. The family held a memorial service, a supposed farewell to the woman who had brought so much chaos and destruction into their lives. Everyone, except for Deacon, who remained oddly distant, went through the motions of saying goodbye. It was a tense event, filled with mixed emotions. Steffi's anger remained palpable, Finn's guilt weighed heavily on him, and Deacon, who had once been close to Sheila, stood on the outskirts, his heart torn in two. He felt the loss, but his loyalty was split between his feelings for Sheila and his love for the family he had built. The week following the memorial service, just when everyone thought they could begin to move on from the nightmare that was Sheila Carter, a new twist emerged. The Spencer family, still reeling from the emotional aftermath of Sheila's death, was shocked when a woman entered Il Giardino, the popular restaurant in Los Angeles. She was wearing a large hat, trying to remain inconspicuous, but the moment she ordered a drink, something about her seemed eerily familiar. She asked for a drink with a recipe that only one person in the world knew, Sheila Carter. The woman had a mole in the exact same spot as Sheila, a detail too precise to be coincidental. The resemblance was uncanny, the voice unmistakable. Sheila wasn't dead after all, she had faked her own death. Sheila Carter was back. The shock of this revelation hit like a bombshell. The entire family, already emotionally fragile, was thrust back into the nightmare they had thought was over. Sheila had outsmarted them all. She had faked her own death, played the victim, and now she was back in Los Angeles, ready to continue her reign of terror. The family's worst fears had been realized. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. Steffi's worst nightmare had come to life. Sheila's return meant that all of the pain, all the destruction, all the fear that they had worked so hard to escape was coming back into their lives with a vengeance. Sheila was back, and this time, she wasn't going to make it easy for anyone to move on. The family was plunged back into a world of fear, confusion, and uncertainty. Sheila was alive, and with her return came the promise of even greater chaos. The nightmare had just begun again. The reappearance of Sheila Carter sent shockwaves through Los Angeles, and the Spencer family was once again thrown into turmoil. Sheila's faked death was the ultimate betrayal. A move that had taken everyone completely by surprise. For weeks, they had believed she was gone, that they had finally rid themselves of the woman who had caused so much destruction. But the woman who walked into Il Giardino, wearing a large hat and hiding her identity, was no stranger to them. She was Sheila, alive and well, with a plan that none of them could have anticipated. Her presence immediately set off alarm bells. Steffi, who had fought tooth and nail to keep Sheila out of her family's life, was the first to spot the familiar details: the mole, the voice, the way Sheila moved. Steffi's blood ran cold, and a wave of panic coursed through her. Sheila had not only faked her death, she had returned with vengeance in her heart. The nightmare that Steffi had desperately hoped was over was now back in full force. The woman who sat at the bar, ordering a drink with a recipe only Sheila knew, was a living reminder of the chaos and pain Sheila had brought into their lives. But this time, Sheila wasn't just a ghost from the past, she was real, and her return meant that the family was once again caught in her web. Sheila had always been a master manipulator, and this latest stunt was a testament to her ability to remain one step ahead of everyone. Finn, still reeling from the emotional roller coaster that Sheila's supposed death had caused, was blindsided by her return. He had tried to make peace with her during her final days, believing that she had genuinely changed and was seeking redemption. Now, with the revelation that Sheila had orchestrated the entire thing, he felt utterly betrayed. His belief in his mother had been shattered. The woman he had fought so hard to love and understand was once again proving that she could not be trusted. As Finn processed the reality that his mother was still alive, Steffi, overwhelmed with rage and fear, confronted Sheila with a fury that only a mother could understand. "You think you can just walk back into our lives and pretend like nothing happened?" Steffi's voice trembled with anger. "You lied to us, Sheila. You made us believe you were dead, and now you're back, trying to destroy everything again." Sheila's response was cold and calculated, her smile twisted with the satisfaction of knowing she had pulled off her greatest deception. "You think I've come to destroy you?" "No, Steffi. I've come to finish what I started, to make sure that everything you've built comes crashing down." Her words were like a dagger to Steffi's heart. Sheila had always been a master of manipulation, but now it was clear that she had no intention of simply letting the past be. The battle for control, for power, was far from over. Sheila was back, and she was determined to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers, the right to disrupt the Forrester family's fragile peace. Deacon, still emotionally tied to Sheila despite everything, was caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He had always been drawn to her, even as he knew the dangers she posed. His love for her was complicated, filled with history and unresolved feelings. Now that Sheila was back, Deacon was once again faced with the dilemma of choosing between his loyalty to her and his responsibility to the people he loved. Deacon's internal struggle was evident as he watched Sheila wreak havoc on the family. He wanted to be the person who could bring peace to her, who could guide her away from the path of destruction. But it was becoming increasingly clear that Sheila had no interest in redemption. She was back for one thing, revenge. And Deacon was forced to confront the painful truth that the woman he loved, the woman who had once promised him the world, was the same person who had brought nothing but pain and suffering to everyone around her. As Sheila's presence continued to send shockwaves through the family, the members of the Forrester and Spencer families were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Ridge, still reeling from the aftermath of his complicated relationship with Brooke, found himself once again grappling with the ghost of his past. Brooke, too, was caught in the crossfire of Sheila's return. Her guilt over the mistakes of her past had been compounded by the fact that Sheila's return was not just a personal tragedy, it was a threat to her entire family. Brooke knew that if Sheila's game was allowed to continue, there would be no escaping the destruction she would leave in her wake. But the question on everyone's mind was clear: what did Sheila want now? Why had she faked her death only to return with such venom? The answer was chilling. Sheila had returned not just to stir up chaos, but to reclaim the power she had once lost. In her twisted mind, she had been wronged by the Forrester family and had never gotten the revenge she so desperately sought. Now, with a plan that was as dangerous as it was calculated, Sheila was intent on making the family pay for everything she believed they had taken from her. The tension in Los Angeles was palpable as Sheila's return signaled the beginning of a new chapter of terror for the Forresters and Spencers. Steffi's anger and resolve were put to the test as she faced off against the woman who had caused her family so much pain. Finn's loyalty was torn between his mother and his wife, with no clear answer in sight. Deacon, caught in the middle, struggled to reconcile the man he had become with the dangerous woman he couldn't quite let go of. As the stakes continued to rise, one thing became abundantly clear: Sheila's return would be the catalyst for an all-out war. A war not just for revenge, but for survival. The Forrester and Spencer families would have to fight tooth and nail to protect what was left of their fragile peace. And with Sheila pulling the strings from the shadows, No one could predict just how far her reach would extend or who would be left standing in the end. The nightmare that had seemed to come to an end was only beginning. Sheila had faked her death, returned from the shadows, and was now ready to resume her reign of terror. And this time, she wasn't going to stop until she had destroyed everything and everyone who stood in her way.